The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as I sat in the cramped conference room, staring at the termination letter in my hands. 3 years of 60-hour weeks, missed family dinners, and sacrificed weekends had led to this moment. My boss, Richard Brennan, leaned back in his leather chair with a smirk that would haunt me for months to come. "I'd love to know which corner of the globe you're watching from. And if this story speaks to you, make sure to subscribe. Tomorrow's video is one you absolutely can't miss." "You'll never succeed without me, Marcus," he said, his voice dripping with condescension. "This company made you. Without our resources, our connections, our guidance, you're nothing but another failed entrepreneur waiting to happen." Little did he know that 5 years later, I'd be sitting across from him in my own boardroom, offering him a position at half his former salary. But that's getting ahead of myself. This story begins in the basement of a small accounting firm in downtown Phoenix, where I learned the most expensive lesson of my career. The morning I started at Brennan & Associates, I thought I was stepping into my future. Fresh out of Arizona State with a degree in business administration and a head full of dreams, I walked through those glass doors believing I was about to build something meaningful. The firm specialized in financial consulting for small to medium-sized businesses, and I was hired as a junior analyst with promises of rapid advancement and profit-sharing opportunities. Richard Brennan was 43 years old, impeccably dressed, and carried himself with the kind of confidence that immediately commanded respect. He had built the firm from nothing 15 years earlier, transforming it from a one-man operation into a respected consultancy with 23 employees and an impressive client roster. During my interview, he spoke passionately about mentorship, about building the next generation of business leaders, and about creating opportunities for ambitious young professionals like myself. "Marcus," he said that first day, his hand firmly gripping my shoulder, "I see something special in you. You have the hunger, the drive. Stick with me, learn everything I teach you, and I'll show you how to build real wealth in this business." I believed every word. The first 6 months were intoxicating. Richard took me under his wing, bringing me to client meetings, explaining the intricacies of financial planning, and teaching me how to read between the lines of balance sheets and cash flow statements. I absorbed everything like a sponge, working late into the evenings to master the software systems, memorizing industry regulations, and studying successful case studies from the firm's archives. My breakthrough came during a consultation with Southwestern Manufacturing, a mid-sized company struggling with cash flow issues. While Richard was explaining their options, I noticed something in their quarterly reports that everyone else had missed. They were sitting on significant unused tax credits from a green energy initiative that could be converted into immediate cash flow relief. "Excuse me," I interrupted, something I'd never done before in a client meeting. "I think there might be another option we haven't considered." Richard's eyes flashed with annoyance, but he nodded for me to continue. I explained my findings, walking through the numbers with growing confidence. The room fell silent as I finished my presentation. The client, Patricia Summers, leaned forward with interest. "How much are we talking about here?" "Based on these figures, approximately $230,000 in immediate relief, with the potential for an additional $150,000 over the next 18 months, if we restructure the depreciation schedule properly." Patricia's face lit up. "Richard, is this accurate?" Richard cleared his throat, his composure slightly shaken. "Yes, well, Marcus has identified a creative solution. We'll need to verify the numbers, of course, but it appears to be a viable option." That single observation saved Southwestern Manufacturing from bankruptcy and earned the firm a $300,000 consulting fee. More importantly, it established my reputation as someone who could see opportunities others missed. Word spread quickly through Phoenix's business community. Within 6 months, I was receiving direct inquiries from potential clients who specifically requested to work with me. Richard handled this development with characteristic grace, at least outwardly. He praised my initiative during team meetings, increased my responsibilities, and even gave me a modest raise. But I began to notice subtle changes in our dynamic. My name started disappearing from client communications. Meetings I had initiated were suddenly being led by Richard without my involvement. When I questioned these changes, he would smile and explain that he was protecting me from the administrative burden, so I could focus on what I did best. "You're the talent, Marcus," he would say. "Let me handle the business side. That's what I'm here for." The arrangement worked, at least on the surface. Our client base grew from 43 to 67 companies over the next 2 years. Revenue increased by 40%, and the firm's reputation continued to soar. I was earning more money than I had ever imagined, driving a new BMW and living in a luxury apartment in Scottsdale, but something was eating at me. During late-night conversations with my girlfriend Sarah, I found myself expressing frustration about my career trajectory. Despite being responsible for many of the firm's biggest wins, I felt like I was running in place professionally. Maybe it's time to consider starting your own practice, Sarah suggested one evening as we sat on my balcony overlooking the city. You have the clients, the expertise, and the reputation now. The idea had been percolating in my mind for months, but hearing it spoken aloud made it feel real and terrifying at the same time. I had been reading about other successful consultants who had launched their own firms, studying their strategies and business models. The more I researched, the more convinced I became that I was ready to take the leap. I began working on a business plan during my spare time, carefully calculating startup costs, potential revenue streams, and growth projections. The numbers were encouraging. Based on my track record and the relationships I had built, I projected breaking even within 8 months and generating substantial profits by the end of year 2. The plan was to start small, focusing on my core competencies in financial analysis and tax optimization. I would target the same mid-sized companies that had been my specialty at Brennan & Associates, but offer more personalized service and competitive rates. I had even identified potential office space in a professional complex near downtown Phoenix. My excitement was building as the plan took shape. I started reaching out to former colleagues who might be interested in joining me, discreetly sounding out potential clients about their satisfaction with current services, and researching the legal requirements for establishing a consulting practice in Arizona. The mistake I made was trusting Richard with my dreams. It happened on a Thursday afternoon in late October. I had just finished presenting a complex restructuring plan to Mesa Technologies, another client whose business I had helped save. The presentation had gone exceptionally well, with the client expressing both gratitude and amazement at the thoroughness of my analysis. As we walked back to the office, Richard seemed unusually quiet. Finally, he spoke. "Marcus, I can see you're restless. You've been distracted lately, and frankly, your work is starting to suffer." I was taken aback. "I don't think that's fair, Richard. The Mesa Technologies presentation was one of my best yet." "That's exactly what I'm talking about. You're so focused on impressing clients that you're losing sight of the bigger picture. This isn't about individual victories, Marcus. It's about building something sustainable." We continued this conversation in his office, behind closed doors. Richard poured himself a scotch from the crystal decanter on his credenza and settled into his chair with the air of a disappointed father. "I've been watching you for 3 years now," he said. "You have talent, I'll give you that. But talent without guidance is just wasted potential. You think you're ready to strike out on your own, don't you?" The question caught me off guard. I hadn't mentioned my business plans to anyone at the firm, but Richard's intuition was sharp. "I've been considering it," I admitted. Richard laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Marcus, you have no idea what you're talking about. Do you know how many talented people I've seen flame out because they thought they were ready to go it alone? This business isn't about being smart with numbers. It's about relationships, reputation, and resources that take decades to build." He stood up and walked to the window, gazing out at the Phoenix skyline. "Every client you've worked with came to us because of relationships I spent 15 years building. Every successful strategy you've implemented was possible because of systems and processes I developed. You think you can just walk away and recreate all of that?" "I'm not trying to recreate what you've built," I said, feeling defensive. "I want to create something new, something that's mine." "Something that's yours?" Richard turned back to face me, his expression hardening. "Marcus, you seem to have forgotten something important. You work for me. The clients you've helped, the strategies you've developed, the reputation you think you've built, all of that belongs to this firm. All of that belongs to me." The conversation continued for another hour, with Richard systematically dismantling every aspect of my business plan. He questioned my understanding of regulatory requirements, my ability to attract clients without his network, and my financial projections. By the time I left his office, I felt deflated and confused. But I wasn't deterred. If anything, Richard's reaction convinced me that I was on the right track. His defensiveness suggested that he saw me as a threat, which meant my plan had merit. Over the next 3 months, I worked harder than ever to prove my worth, while secretly refining my business strategy. I stayed late every night, came in early every morning, and threw myself into every project with renewed vigor. I wanted to leave on the highest note possible, with an undeniable track record of success. A lot of love and effort went into bringing this story to life. If you're enjoying it, we'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe to our channel. Now, back to where we left off. The end came suddenly and without warning. Go God. It was a Tuesday morning in January when I arrived at the office to find a security guard waiting at my desk. Human Resources Director Jennifer Walsh stood beside him with a folder in her hands and an uncomfortable expression on her face. "Marcus, we need to speak with you in conference room B," she said quietly. The next 30 minutes passed in a blur of legal terminology and corporate procedures. Effective immediately, my employment with Brennan & Associates was terminated for breach of fiduciary duty and violation of company confidentiality agreements. The specific allegations were vague but damaging: inappropriate client contact, unauthorized sharing of proprietary information, and planning to compete directly with the firm while still employed. I was stunned. While I had been developing my business plan, I had been scrupulously careful not to violate any actual policies. I had never shared confidential information, never solicited clients, and never used company resources for personal purposes. "This is ridiculous," I protested. "I've done nothing wrong. I've been completely professional and ethical in all my dealings." Jennifer looked genuinely sympathetic, but her response was firm. "Marcus, the decision has been made at the highest level. You have 15 minutes to collect your personal belongings. The security guard will escort you out." As I packed my few personal items into a cardboard box, my mind raced with questions and implications. How had Richard discovered my plans? What evidence did he have of wrongdoing? And most importantly, what was I going to do now? The security guard walked me to the elevator, his presence a humiliating reminder of how quickly everything had changed. As the doors closed, I caught a glimpse of Richard standing in his office doorway, watching my departure with what looked like satisfaction. The elevator descended to the parking garage, and I realized that my career at Brennan & Associates was over. 3 years of hard work, dedication, and loyalty had ended with a security escort and a box of personal belongings. But Richard wasn't finished with me yet. As I reached my car, my phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. "Conference room B, 10 a.m. tomorrow. Don't be late." I looked back at the building, confused and angry. What more could they possibly want from me? The next morning, I found myself back in the same conference room where my employment had been terminated. This time, only Richard was waiting for me, sitting casually at the head of the table with a cup of coffee and a thick manila folder. "Sit down, Marcus," he said without looking up. I remained standing. "What is this about, Richard? I've already been terminated. I don't work here anymore." He finally raised his eyes to meet mine, and I saw something there that I had never seen before. Pure, undisguised contempt. "You're right. You don't work here anymore. But we still have some things to discuss." He opened the manila folder and spread several documents across the table. I recognized them immediately. Printed copies of emails I had sent to former colleagues, notes from my business plan, and even photographs of the office space I had been considering. "You've been a busy boy, Marcus," Richard said, his voice dripping with mock admiration. "Starting your own firm, poaching my clients, stealing my employees. Very ambitious." "I haven't stolen anything," I said, though my heart was racing. "I haven't even launched a business yet." "But you were planning to. And in the process, you violated several clauses of your employment agreement." He picked up a document I recognized as my original contract. Clause 15 specifically prohibits employees from soliciting clients or employees for competing ventures while employed by the firm. Clause 23 requires disclosure of any potential conflicts of interest. And Clause 31 gives the firm ownership of any business strategies or methodologies developed during the course of employment. I sat down heavily in the nearest chair. "Richard, I never solicited anyone. I never shared confidential information. And I developed my business plan on my own time. That's not how our legal department sees it, he replied smoothly. And frankly, it doesn't matter what you think you did or didn't do. What matters is what I can prove in court. He leaned back in his chair, studying me with the cold calculation of a predator. Here's what's going to happen, Marcus. You're going to sign a non-compete agreement that prevents you from working in financial consulting anywhere in Arizona for the next 5 years. You're going to sign a non-disclosure agreement that prevents you from discussing anything you learned while working here. And you're going to sign a statement acknowledging that you violated your employment agreement and waiving any claims against the firm. I stared at him in disbelief. You can't be serious. I'm completely serious. And if you don't sign, I'll make sure that every potential employer in Phoenix knows exactly why you were terminated. I'll make sure that every client you've ever worked with knows that you were planning to steal their business. I'll make sure that your reputation in this industry is destroyed before you even get started. The room fell silent except for the hum of the air conditioning. I could feel my dreams crumbling around me, but I wasn't ready to give up yet. What if I refused to sign? Richard's smile widened. Then you'll learn exactly what it means to go up against someone with real power in this industry. I've been building relationships in this business for 15 years, Marcus. I know everyone worth knowing. I have favors to call in, connections to leverage, and resources you can't even imagine. He stood up and walked around the table until he was standing directly behind my chair. You see, Marcus, you made a fundamental error in judgment. You thought that because you were good at your job, you were ready to be your own boss. But being good at your job and being able to run a business are two completely different things. You don't have the experience, the connections, or the capital to compete with established firms like mine. His hand landed on my shoulder, the same gesture he had used to welcome me 3 years earlier. But now it felt like a threat. You'll never succeed without me, Marcus. This company made you. Without our resources, our connections, our guidance, you're nothing but another failed entrepreneur waiting to happen. Sign the agreements, take some time to think about your future, and maybe in 5 years you'll be ready to have a conversation about coming back to work for me. I looked down at the documents spread across the table, each one representing another barrier to my independence. The non-compete agreement alone would effectively end my career in Arizona. The non-disclosure agreement would prevent me from leveraging most of what I had learned. And the admission of wrongdoing would make it nearly impossible to find employment elsewhere. But something in Richard's tone and his assumption that I would simply capitulate sparked a flame of defiance that I didn't know I possessed. No, I said quietly. Excuse me? I stood up and faced him directly. I said no, I'm not signing your agreements. I haven't done anything wrong, and I'm not going to pretend that I have. Richard's expression shifted from surprise to anger. Marcus, you're making a very serious mistake. I'm offering you a way out of this with your dignity intact. Don't throw that away out of stubborn pride. My dignity? I laughed bitterly. You want to talk about dignity? You spent 3 years convincing me that you were my mentor, that you cared about my success, that you were building something meaningful. And the moment you felt threatened, you threw me away like garbage. I gave you opportunities that most people never get, Richard shot back. I taught you everything you know about this business. I made you who you are today. No, Richard. You taught me how to analyze financial statements and build client relationships. But you didn't make me who I am. My work ethic, my integrity, my ability to see solutions that others miss, those came from me, not from you. I gathered up my copy of the employment contract and walked toward the door. Where are you going? Richard demanded. I'm going to build my own firm, I said without turning around, and I'm going to prove that everything you just said about me is wrong. I heard him laugh as I reached for the door handle. Marcus, you're going to regret this decision for the rest of your life. You'll never succeed without me. Mark my words. You'll come crawling back, begging for a job, and I'll be here to remind you of this moment. I paused at the door and looked back at him one last time. We'll see about that, Richard. As I walked out of Brennan & Associates for the final time, I had no idea how I was going to keep the promise I had just made. I had no clients, no employees, no office, and no significant savings. What I did have was a burning determination to prove Richard Brennan wrong, and the unwavering belief that I could build something better than what I was leaving behind. The real journey was just beginning. Walking out of that conference room felt like stepping off a cliff into complete darkness. The Phoenix sun beat down mercilessly as I sat in my BMW in the parking garage, staring at my phone screen, trying to figure out who to call first. My savings account showed $43,000, enough to survive for maybe 6 months if I lived carefully, but nowhere near enough to launch a proper consulting firm. Sarah found me 3 hours later, still sitting in that same parking spot. "Marcus?" She tapped on the passenger window, her face creased with worry. "I got your text. What happened?" I unlocked the door and she slid in beside me. The whole story came pouring out. The termination, the legal threats, Richard's ultimatum, and my decision to walk away from his agreements. When I finished, Sarah was quiet for a long moment. "So what happens now?" she asked finally. "I have no idea." That night, I called my father in Tucson. David Chen had immigrated from Taiwan in 1978, with nothing but a mechanical engineering degree and an unshakable belief in the American dream. He'd worked double shifts at a manufacturing plant for 15 years before saving enough to open his own machine shop. "Son," he said after I explained my situation, "sometimes life pushes you off the safe path because you're meant to find a better one. Your mother and I didn't come to this country so you could spend your life working for someone else's dreams." His words gave me strength, but they didn't solve my immediate problems. The next morning, I started making a list of everything I needed to do. Find affordable office space. Register a business entity. Obtain the necessary licenses and insurance. Build a website. Develop marketing materials. And somehow do all of this while Richard Brennan was actively working to sabotage my reputation. The first sign of Richard's campaign came 2 days later. I had arranged a meeting with Tom Valdez, the owner of Desert Solar Solutions, a mid-sized renewable energy company I'd worked with at Brennan & Associates. Tom had called me directly, expressing interest in continuing our professional relationship. I arrived at the coffee shop 15 minutes early, dressed in my best suit and carrying a portfolio of case studies and references. Tom showed up right on time, but his demeanor was completely different from our phone conversation. "Marcus," he said, sliding into the booth across from me, "I have to be honest with you. I got a call yesterday from Richard Brennan." My stomach dropped. "What did he tell you?" "He said there were some ethical issues surrounding your departure from the firm. Something about violating confidentiality agreements and attempting to steal clients." Tom looked uncomfortable. "Look, I like you personally and I appreciate the work you did for us, but I can't risk getting my company involved in any legal disputes." I spent 20 minutes explaining my side of the story, showing Tom documentation that proved I had never violated any agreements or shared confidential information. But the damage was done. Even if Tom believed me, the mere suggestion of ethical problems was enough to make him walk away. This pattern repeated itself over the next 6 weeks. Potential clients who had initially expressed interest suddenly became unavailable or decided to stick with their current providers. Former colleagues stopped returning my phone calls. Even my personal network seemed to be drying up as word spread about my problematic departure from Brennan & Associates. By March, I was running out of money and options. The small office space I'd rented in a strip mall near downtown Phoenix felt more like a prison than a headquarters. I'd spent weeks cold calling businesses, sending out marketing materials, and networking at industry events, but I had landed exactly 0 clients. The lowest point came on a Tuesday afternoon when I was sitting alone in my empty office, staring at a past due notice from my landlord. My phone rang, and for a moment my heart jumped, thinking it might be a potential client. Instead, it was Jennifer Walsh from Brennan & Associates. "Marcus, I hope you're doing well," she said, though her tone suggested she knew I wasn't. "Richard asked me to reach out to you about a potential opportunity." "What kind of opportunity?" "Well, we have an opening for a senior analyst position. The pay would be 60% of what you were making before, and you'd be working under direct supervision, but it's steady income. Richard thought you might be interested, given your current situation." The offer was designed to be humiliating. Richard was essentially asking me to come crawling back as a subordinate, taking a massive pay cut, and accepting public acknowledgement that I had failed as an entrepreneur. It was exactly what he had predicted would happen. Tell Richard the First appreciate the offer, I said carefully, but I'm not interested. Marcus, please don't let pride make this decision for you. Richard is willing to overlook everything that happened if you're ready to be realistic about your capabilities. After I hung up, I sat in that silent office for another hour, seriously considering whether I should swallow my pride and take the job. My rent was 2 months behind. My credit cards were maxed out. My relationship with Sarah was strained by the financial pressure and my constant stress. But something my father had said kept echoing in my mind. Sometimes life pushes you off the safe path, because you're meant to find a better one. That evening, I made a decision that would change everything. Instead of continuing to compete directly with established firms like Brennan and Associates, I would create something entirely different. I would focus on businesses that were too small for the big consulting firms, but too complex for basic accounting services, the gap in the market that everyone else was ignoring. I spent the next 3 days researching small business owners throughout Arizona, looking for companies with annual revenues between $500,000 and $2 million. These were successful businesses that were often struggling with the financial complexity that came with growth, but they couldn't afford the $200 per hour rates that firms like Brennan and Associates charged. My breakthrough came from an unexpected source. While researching potential clients, I stumbled across an online forum for small business owners, where entrepreneurs shared their frustrations about finding affordable financial guidance. Thread after thread detailed the same problems. They were making money but couldn't figure out how to optimize their tax situations. They needed better financial controls but couldn't afford enterprise-level solutions. And they wanted to expand but lacked proper financial planning. I created an account and started answering questions for free, sharing insights about tax optimization, cash flow management, and financial planning. Within 2 weeks, I was getting direct messages from business owners asking if I offered consulting services. My first paying client was Maria Gonzalez, who owned a chain of 3 Mexican restaurants in Tempe. She was grossing $1.8 million annually, but was frustrated by her inability to understand why her profit margins seemed to shrink every year despite increasing sales. "I'm paying my accountant $3,000 a month," she told me during our initial phone consultation. "But all he does is file my taxes and tell me I need to make more money. I need someone who can help me understand where my money is actually going." I proposed a comprehensive financial analysis for $2,500, less than she was paying her accountant for a single month of basic services. The project took me 40 hours of detailed work, analyzing 3 years of financial data, interviewing key employees, and developing a customized cost control system. What I discovered was both shocking and exciting. Maria's restaurants were actually performing extremely well compared to industry standards, but she was losing approximately $8,000 per month to inefficient inventory management, overstaffing during slow periods, and a payment processing system that was charging her nearly double the market rate for credit card transactions. My recommendations were specific and immediately actionable. I showed her how to implement a just-in-time inventory system that would reduce waste by 40%. I developed shift schedules that would maintain service quality while reducing labor costs by 15%. And I negotiated new contracts with payment processors that would save her $1,200 per month in transaction fees. Within 60 days of implementing my recommendations, Maria's monthly profit had increased by $11,400, more than 4 times what she had paid me for the analysis. "Marcus," she said during our follow-up meeting, "this is exactly what I needed. You didn't just give me numbers, you gave me solutions I could actually use." More importantly, Maria started referring other business owners to me. Her success story became my calling card, proof that I could deliver real value to small and medium-sized businesses that were being underserved by traditional consulting firms. Over the next 8 months, I developed a systematic approach that became the foundation of my business model. Instead of charging hourly rates like most consultants, I offered fixed-price projects with guaranteed outcomes. Clients knew exactly what they were paying and what results they could expect. My second major client was Kevin Rodriguez, who owned a small construction company that was struggling with cash flow despite having more work than he could handle. The problem was classic for construction businesses. He was paying subcontractors and suppliers up front, but waiting 60 to 90 days to get paid by general contractors. I developed a financing solution that involved invoice factoring, progress billing, and strategic partnerships with suppliers who offered net 30 terms. Within 4 months, Kevin's cash flow problems were solved, and he was able to take on 40% more projects because he wasn't constantly waiting for payments to clear. Word of mouth became my most powerful marketing tool. Small business owners talked to each other constantly, sharing recommendations about everything from suppliers to service providers. Once I proved that I could solve real problems at reasonable prices, referrals started flowing naturally. By the end of my first year as an independent consultant, I had worked with 17 different businesses and generated $127,000 in revenue. It wasn't the millions I had been handling at Brennan & Associates, but every dollar was mine, and every client's success felt personal. More importantly, I was learning aspects of business that I had never been exposed to while working for Richard. At Brennan & Associates, I had been sheltered from the real challenges of entrepreneurship, marketing, sales, operations, customer service, and financial management. Now I was experiencing all of these challenges firsthand, and each obstacle was making me stronger and more capable. The second year brought exponential growth. I hired my first employee, Lisa Park, a recent MBA graduate who specialized in operations management. Together, we developed proprietary software tools that could analyze small business financials and generate actionable recommendations in a fraction of the time it had taken me to do manually. We also expanded our service offerings beyond basic financial consulting. We started providing ongoing CFO services for businesses that couldn't afford a full-time chief financial officer, developed standardized systems for inventory management and cost control, and created educational workshops for business owners who wanted to improve their financial literacy. By the end of year 2, Chen Financial Solutions, the name I had chosen for my firm, was generating $340,000 in annual revenue and serving 43 active clients. I had moved into a proper office space in a professional building and was seriously considering hiring additional staff. But the real validation came from an unexpected source. I was attending a small business expo in downtown Phoenix when I overheard a conversation at the booth next to mine. 2 men were discussing their frustrations with their current financial consultant. "The guy charges us $300 an hour and takes weeks to return our calls," one of them was saying. "And when he does finally get back to us, half the time his advice doesn't even make sense for a business our size." "Who are you working with?" the other man asked. "Brennan & Associates. They're supposed to be one of the top firms in the city, but honestly, I think they're more interested in big corporate clients. We're just not important enough to get their attention." I couldn't help but smile. Richard's firm was struggling with the same problem that had led to my initial success. They were so focused on landing high-value corporate clients that they were neglecting the small and medium-sized businesses that actually formed the backbone of the local economy. Over the next few months, I started hearing similar complaints from other business owners. Brennan & Associates had become increasingly selective about the clients they would accept, turning away businesses that didn't meet their minimum revenue requirements. They had also raised their rates significantly, pricing themselves out of reach for many of the clients they had previously served. Meanwhile, Chen Financial Solutions was thriving by serving exactly those clients that the established firms were ignoring. We were growing by solving problems that others considered too small or too complicated to be worth their time. The third year brought another major breakthrough. I was approached by the Arizona Small Business Association to develop a financial literacy program for their members. The program would involve monthly workshops, online training materials, and one-on-one consulting sessions for business owners who were struggling with financial management. The ASA contract was worth $85,000 annually and gave me access to hundreds of potential clients throughout the state. More importantly, it established Chen Financial Solutions as a recognized authority in small business financial consulting. By now, I had expanded to a team of 5 employees and was generating over $600,000 in annual revenue. We had developed proprietary methodologies for financial analysis, created software tools that could diagnose common business problems automatically, and built a reputation for delivering results that exceeded client expectations. The growth was exhilarating, but it also brought new challenges. Managing employees, maintaining quality standards, and scaling operations were all skills I was learning on the fly. There were plenty of mistakes along the way. Projects that ran over budget, clients who were impossible to satisfy, employees who didn't work out. But each challenge was also a learning opportunity. Every problem I solved made me more confident in my ability to build and run a successful business. I was developing skills and experience that no amount of working for someone else could have provided. The fourth year marked a turning point that I hadn't anticipated. Chen Financial Solutions had grown large enough to compete directly with established firms like Brennan and Associates for mid-sized corporate clients. Our reputation for delivering practical solutions at reasonable prices was attracting businesses that had previously been out of our league. I started receiving calls from companies with annual revenues of $10 minus $20 million, businesses that would have been prime targets for Brennan and Associates just a few years earlier. The difference was that these companies had heard about our track record with smaller businesses and wanted to work with consultants who understood their specific challenges. Our first major corporate client was Southwest Distribution, a logistics company with $18 million in annual revenue and 85 employees. They had been working with a large consulting firm that charged them $50,000 for an analysis that recommended, quote, cost optimization and process improvements, without providing any specific implementation strategies. I proposed a comprehensive 6-month engagement for $35,000 that would include detailed analysis, specific recommendations, implementation support, and ongoing monitoring to ensure results. More importantly, I guaranteed that our recommendations would generate at least $200,000 in annual savings, or they wouldn't pay the full fee. The Southwest Distribution project was our most complex undertaking yet, requiring detailed analysis of supply chain operations, inventory management systems, and distribution logistics. But it was also an opportunity to prove that Chen Financial Solutions could compete with anyone in the market. The results exceeded everyone's expectations. We identified $340,000 in annual cost savings through improved routing algorithms, better inventory management, and renegotiated supplier contracts. We also discovered revenue opportunities worth an additional $180,000 annually through improved customer service and expanded delivery options. Southwest Distribution became our showcase client, and their CEO, Patricia Morrison, became one of our most enthusiastic advocates. She spoke at industry conferences about our work together and referred several other large clients to us. By the end of year 4, Chen Financial Solutions was generating $1.2 million in annual revenue and had established itself as a serious competitor to the traditional consulting firms in Phoenix. We had moved into a larger office space, hired 10 employees, and were being recognized as one of the fastest-growing professional services firms in Arizona. But success brought an unexpected problem. We were starting to face direct competition from Brennan and Associates. Richard had apparently decided that the small and medium-sized business market was worth pursuing after all. Brennan and Associates launched a new division focused on emerging businesses and started aggressively marketing to the same clients we had been serving. The competition was intense and sometimes ugly. I heard reports that Richard was telling potential clients that Chen Financial Solutions was inexperienced and unreliable. He was also undercutting our prices, apparently willing to lose money in the short term to prevent us from gaining market share. But something interesting was happening. Many of the clients who initially chose Brennan and Associates based on their established reputation were becoming dissatisfied with the service they received. The firm's culture and processes were designed for large corporate clients, and they struggled to adapt to the specific needs of smaller businesses. By contrast, Chen Financial Solutions had been built from the ground up to serve this market. Our entire approach, from pricing models to service delivery, was designed around the unique challenges that small and medium-sized businesses faced. As we entered our 5th year of operation, I realized that we had achieved something remarkable. We had created a sustainable, profitable business that was genuinely helping other businesses succeed. We had proven that there was a better way to deliver financial consulting services, and we had built a team of professionals who shared that vision. More importantly, we had survived Richard Brennan's attempts to destroy us and had emerged as a legitimate competitor to his firm. The scared, desperate entrepreneur who had walked out of Brennan and Associates 5 years earlier was gone, replaced by a confident business owner who had learned to trust his own judgment and capabilities. But the real test was still ahead of us. The economic downturn of late 2019 was about to present challenges that would either destroy Chen Financial Solutions or prove once and for all that we had built something truly resilient. The call came at 6:47 a.m. on a Tuesday morning in October 2019. I was in my home office, reviewing quarterly reports over coffee, when my phone rang with an unfamiliar number. "Mr. Chen, this is Amanda Sterling from Pinnacle Manufacturing. I'm sorry to call so early, but we have an emergency situation and your name came up as someone who might be able to help us." Pinnacle Manufacturing was a $45 million aerospace components company that supplied parts to Boeing and other major aircraft manufacturers. I knew them by reputation. They were exactly the kind of large, established client that Brennan and Associates typically served. "What kind of emergency are we talking about?" I asked, setting down my coffee cup. "Our CFO had a heart attack 3 days ago. He's going to be fine, thank God, but the doctors say he'll be out for at least 6 months. Meanwhile, we're in the middle of our annual audit. We have a major contract negotiation with Boeing next week, and our board is demanding answers about some irregularities they've discovered in our financial reporting." I was intrigued but cautious. "Why aren't you working with your usual consultants?" There was a pause. We were working with Brennan and Associates, but frankly, their response to this crisis has been disappointing. They keep telling us they need more time to analyze the situation. But we need solutions now. Several people recommended you as someone who can cut through the noise and get things done quickly. 2 hours later, I was sitting in Pinnacle's conference room with Amanda Sterling, their general counsel, and 3 board members. The company was facing a perfect storm of challenges that threatened their survival. The financial irregularities turned out to be systematic accounting errors that had been accumulating for 3 years. Their previous CFO had been using aggressive revenue recognition practices that technically complied with accounting standards, but painted an unrealistic picture of the company's financial health. When auditors dug deeper, they discovered that Pinnacle's actual cash flow was 30% lower than reported, and their working capital position was dangerously thin. Worse, Boeing was threatening to cancel a $12 million contract unless Pinnacle could demonstrate financial stability within 2 weeks. The aerospace industry demanded rigorous financial transparency from suppliers, and any hint of accounting problems could destroy Pinnacle's reputation permanently. "Brennan and Associates has been studying this situation for 6 weeks, Amanda explained, and their best recommendation is to bring in a restructuring firm and consider bankruptcy protection." I spent the next 12 hours reviewing Pinnacle's financial records, interviewing key employees, and analyzing their cash flow projections. What I found was a fundamentally healthy company that had been poorly managed from a financial perspective. Their core business was profitable and growing, but they had been making decisions based on inaccurate financial information. The solution required aggressive action on multiple fronts. First, we needed to restate 3 years of financial statements to reflect accurate revenue recognition practices. This would show lower historical profits but would restore credibility with auditors and customers. Second, we needed to negotiate emergency credit facilities to bridge their working capital gap while implementing new cash flow management systems. Third, we needed to present Boeing with a comprehensive financial recovery plan that demonstrated long-term stability. I presented my analysis and recommendations to the board the next morning, asking for a $75,000 engagement fee and complete authority to implement necessary changes. The board approved unanimously, and I immediately assembled a team of specialists to execute the plan. The Boeing presentation was scheduled for the following Tuesday. Over the weekend, my team worked around the clock to prepare financial projections, cash flow analyses, and operational improvements that would convince Boeing to maintain their relationship with Pinnacle. The presentation was a success. Boeing's procurement team was impressed by the transparency of our analysis and the comprehensiveness of our recovery plan. Not only did they maintain the existing contract, but they also indicated interest in expanding their relationship with Pinnacle once the financial restructuring was complete. Within 6 weeks, Pinnacle Manufacturing had restated their financials, secured new credit facilities, and implemented financial controls that would prevent future problems. More importantly, they had avoided bankruptcy and preserved their relationships with major customers. Amanda Sterling called me personally to express the board's gratitude. "Marcus, you saved our company. Brennan and Associates spent 6 weeks telling us what was wrong, but you spent 6 weeks fixing it. We're not going to forget this. The Pinnacle success story spread quickly through Phoenix's business community. Within 3 months, I was fielding calls from executives at companies throughout Arizona who were facing complex financial challenges that traditional consulting firms couldn't solve effectively. What made Chen Financial Solutions different was our focus on implementation rather than just analysis. While firms like Brennan and Associates excelled at producing detailed reports and recommendations, we specialized in actually solving problems and delivering measurable results. This approach resonated powerfully with business owners who were tired of paying consultants to tell them what they already knew. They wanted partners who would roll up their sleeves and work alongside them to implement real solutions. By early 2020, we had expanded to 15 employees and were generating $2.1 million in annual revenue. We had also attracted the attention of several private equity firms who were interested in funding our expansion into other markets. But the most significant development was an unexpected phone call I received in March 2020. "Marcus, this is Tom Harrison from Harrison and Associates in Dallas. I've been hearing remarkable things about your firm, and I wanted to discuss a potential partnership opportunity." Harrison and Associates was one of the most respected financial consulting firms in Texas, with clients throughout the Southwest. Tom explained that they were looking to expand into Arizona but wanted to partner with an established local firm rather than trying to build from scratch. "We're impressed by your track record and your approach to client service," Tom said. "Would you be interested in discussing a merger that would give you access to our client base and resources while maintaining your operational independence?" The proposed merger would have doubled our size overnight and given us access to Fortune 500 clients throughout the region. It was an extraordinary opportunity, but it also represented a fundamental choice about the future direction of Chen Financial Solutions. After extensive discussions with my leadership team, I decided to decline the merger offer. We had built something unique, and I wasn't ready to compromise our culture and approach for the sake of rapid growth. Instead, we continued focusing on organic growth and selective expansion. We opened a small satellite office in Tucson and began developing specialized expertise in emerging industries like renewable energy and technology startups. This strategy proved prescient when the COVID-19 pandemic struck in March 2020. While many consulting firms struggled as clients cut spending on advisory services, Chen Financial Solutions experienced unprecedented demand for our crisis management expertise. Small and medium-sized businesses were facing existential threats from lockdowns, supply chain disruptions, and economic uncertainty. They needed immediate help navigating government relief programs, restructuring operations, and preserving cash flow. Our practical, implementation-focused approach was exactly what they needed. We helped dozens of clients apply for Paycheck Protection Program loans, restructure their operations for remote work, and develop contingency plans for various economic scenarios. Our reputation for delivering results during the crisis led to referrals from clients, attorneys, and even competitors who were overwhelmed by demand. By the end of 2020, Chen Financial Solutions had grown to 23 employees and was generating $3.4 million in annual revenue. We had not only survived the pandemic but had emerged stronger and more respected than ever. The contrast with established firms like Brennan and Associates was stark. While we were growing and adapting to changing market conditions, many traditional consulting firms were struggling with declining revenues and client defections. I began hearing rumors that Brennan and Associates was facing serious financial difficulties. Richard had apparently made several poor strategic decisions in recent years, including expensive office leases, overstaffing, and failed attempts to expand into new markets. The rumors were confirmed in February 2021 when I received an unexpected email from Jennifer Walsh, the former HR director at Brennan and Associates. "Marcus, I hope you're doing well. I left Brennan and Associates last month, and I thought you might be interested to know that the firm is going through some significant changes. Richard has been forced to lay off nearly half the staff, and several major clients have terminated their relationships. I know there's history between you two, but I thought you should know that your name has come up in discussions about potential partnership opportunities." The idea that Richard Brennan might be considering a partnership with Chen Financial Solutions was almost surreal. 5 years earlier, he had tried to destroy my career and had predicted that I would fail without his guidance and resources. I decided to reach out to Richard directly. The conversation would either provide closure to an old rivalry or present an unexpected business opportunity. When I called Brennan and Associates, I was told that Richard was unavailable, but he returned my call within 2 hours. "Marcus," he said, his voice lacking the confidence and condescension I remembered. "Thank you for calling. I assume you've heard about the challenges we're facing." "I've heard rumors. What's the situation?" Richard explained that Brennan and Associates had lost several major clients during the pandemic, partly due to their inability to adapt quickly to changing circumstances. The firm's overhead costs had become unsustainable, and they were struggling to compete with more agile competitors. "I'll be direct with you," Richard continued. "We're considering various strategic options, including potential mergers or partnerships. Your firm has an excellent reputation, and I think there might be synergies worth exploring." The conversation was professional, but awkward. Richard never explicitly acknowledged his previous treatment of me, but his willingness to discuss partnership opportunities suggested that he recognized how dramatically our relative positions had changed. I agreed to meet with Richard and his remaining partners to discuss potential collaboration, though I made it clear that any arrangement would need to be structured around Chen Financial Solutions' continuing independence and operational control. The meeting took place the following week in a downtown Phoenix restaurant. Richard arrived with 2 partners I didn't recognize, looking older and more tired than I remembered. The confident, condescending executive who had tried to intimidate me 5 years earlier had been replaced by someone who seemed genuinely humbled by recent events. "Marcus, I want to start by acknowledging that our previous interactions didn't end well," Richard began. "I may have been overly protective of the firm's interests and dismissive of your capabilities. You've clearly proven that you were ready for entrepreneurship, and I respect what you've built." It wasn't quite an apology, but it was closer than I had expected. The partnership proposal was straightforward. Brennan and Associates would maintain their brand and existing client relationships, but they would operate as a division of Chen Financial Solutions. Richard and his partners would become employees rather than owners, and all major strategic decisions would be made by my leadership team. The financial terms were stark. Richard would take a 40% pay cut from his previous compensation, and his former partners would accept roles as senior consultants rather than equity partners. In exchange, they would gain access to our operational systems, client development processes, and financial stability. "I understand this isn't the outcome any of us anticipated 5 years ago," Richard said quietly. "But sometimes you have to adapt to changing circumstances." I asked for time to consider the proposal and discuss it with my team. The potential benefits were significant. We would gain access to established client relationships and experienced consultants who could accelerate our growth into larger corporate markets. But there were also risks. Integrating 2 different company cultures would be challenging, and I wasn't sure I trusted Richard to subordinate his ego to our organizational structure. After extensive discussions with my leadership team and several sleepless nights of reflection, I decided to move forward with a modified version of the proposal. Rather than a full merger, I offered to acquire specific client contracts and hire individual consultants who were interested in joining Chen Financial Solutions. This would give us the benefits of expansion without the complications of integrating an entire organization. Most importantly, I offered Richard a position as a senior consultant, reporting to one of my vice presidents, at a salary of $95,000, exactly half of what he had been paying me when I left Brennan and Associates 5 years earlier. Richard accepted the offer. The transition took 3 months to complete. By June 2021, Chen Financial Solutions had grown to 31 employees and was generating $4.7 million in annual revenue. We had successfully integrated the best elements of Brennan and Associates while maintaining our culture and operational approach. Richard's integration into our team was surprisingly smooth. Whatever arrogance and condescension he had displayed as a business owner seemed to disappear once he became an employee. He worked diligently, followed our processes, and generally contributed positively to our client relationships. During his first performance review, I couldn't resist referencing our previous conversation. "Richard, do you remember what you told me when I left Brennan and Associates?" He nodded, looking uncomfortable. "I remember saying that you'd never succeed without me. Obviously, I was wrong about that. You also said I'd come crawling back, begging for a job." Richard was quiet for a moment. "I suppose there's some irony in how things turned out." I don't see it as irony, I said. I see it as proof that success in business isn't about who has the most experience or the biggest reputation. It's about who can adapt, innovate, and deliver real value to clients. Richard has been working for Chen Financial Solutions for 18 months now. He's a competent consultant who follows directions well and contributes to our client success. But every day when he walks into our office, sits at his assigned desk, and reports to managers who are 15 years younger than him, I'm reminded of how dramatically our positions have reversed. The scared, desperate entrepreneur who walked out of Brennan & Associates 6 years ago has been replaced by the owner of one of Arizona's most successful consulting firms. And the arrogant, condescending boss who predicted my failure is now my employee, earning exactly half of what he once paid me. Sometimes the best revenge really is massive success. But even better than revenge is the satisfaction of knowing that you built something meaningful, something that genuinely helps other people succeed, and something that proves your former doubters wrong in the most definitive way possible. The story isn't over yet. Chen Financial Solutions continues to grow, and we're exploring opportunities to expand into other states. Richard continues to work for us, and while our relationship will never be warm, it has become professional and productive. But every time I see him in the office, I'm reminded of the lesson that took me 6 years to fully understand. The only person who can determine your success or failure is you. Everything else, mentors, resources, connections, even luck, is just background noise. The real measure of success isn't how high you climb while someone else is holding the ladder. It's whether you can build your own ladder when everyone else says it's impossible. The morning Richard Brennan walked into our office for his first day as my employee, I felt a strange mix of vindication and responsibility. Vindication because it represented the complete reversal of everything he had predicted about my future. Responsibility because I now had to prove that success hadn't corrupted me the way it had corrupted him. I had decided to handle Richard's integration personally, rather than delegating it to HR. This wasn't about humiliation. It was about establishing the professional standards that would define our working relationship going forward. Richard, I said as I walked him to his new workspace, I want to be clear about expectations. You're here because you have valuable skills and experience that can benefit our clients. Your past success with Brennan & Associates earned you this opportunity, but you're starting over here, and you'll be evaluated based on your contributions to our team and our clients' success. His new office was modest but professional, a far cry from the executive suite he'd occupied at his own firm but appropriate for a senior consultant. I had specifically chosen a workspace that faced the main floor, ensuring that Richard would be visible to the entire team and reminded daily of his new position in the hierarchy. I understand, he replied, setting down a small box of personal items. I appreciate the opportunity, Marcus. I know this situation is unconventional. Over the following weeks, I watched Richard navigate his new reality with surprising grace. The arrogant executive who had once dismissed my capabilities was replaced by a diligent employee who arrived early, stayed late, and focused intensely on his assigned projects. His first assignment was supporting our analysis of Mesa Valley Hospital, a regional medical center that was struggling with cost overruns and declining reimbursement rates from insurance companies. Richard's healthcare expertise proved valuable, and he worked effectively under the supervision of Jennifer Martinez, one of our vice presidents who was 12 years younger than him. The transformation was remarkable to witness. Richard, who had once insisted on being the primary point of contact for all major decisions, now deferred to Jennifer's judgment and followed our established processes without complaint. When clients asked to speak with the senior partner, he would politely redirect them to me or other members of our leadership team. But the real test came 3 months into Richard's employment, when we faced our biggest opportunity yet. Southwest Aerospace Consortium, a coalition of 6 aerospace manufacturers representing $280 million in combined annual revenue, was seeking a financial consulting firm to help them navigate a complex merger and consolidation process. The project would involve restructuring operations across multiple states, optimizing supply chains, and creating integrated financial systems for the combined entity. The engagement was worth $1.2 million over 18 months, by far the largest contract in Chen Financial Solutions history. But But it was also exactly the type of complex, high-stakes project that established firms like Brennan and Associates had traditionally dominated. Our competition for the contract included McKinsey & Company, Deloitte, and 2 other national consulting firms. We were the smallest and least experienced firm in the bidding process, but we had one crucial advantage: our track record of actually implementing solutions rather than just providing recommendations. I decided to include Richard in our proposal team, recognizing that his experience with large-scale aerospace projects could be valuable. But I made it clear that he would be a supporting team member, not the lead consultant. The proposal presentation was scheduled for a Thursday morning at the consortium's headquarters in Scottsdale. Our team consisted of myself, Jennifer Martinez, our operations director Mike Thompson, and Richard. I would lead the presentation, with each team member contributing expertise in their specific areas. As we prepared for the presentation, Richard approached me with a suggestion that surprised me. "Marcus, I think you should let me take the lead on the operational restructuring section. I have direct experience with similar projects, and the clients might respond better to someone with my background." The old Richard would have made this suggestion as a demand, implying that his expertise was essential for success. But this version was making a genuine offer to contribute based on his strengths. "I appreciate the offer," I replied, "but Jennifer will be handling that section. You'll support her with specific technical questions if they arise." Richard nodded without argument. "Understood. I'll make sure I'm prepared to provide backup information if needed." The presentation went exceptionally well. Our team demonstrated comprehensive understanding of the consortium's challenges and presented specific, actionable solutions for each aspect of the merger process. More importantly, we showed how our implementation-focused approach would ensure that recommendations were actually executed, rather than filed away in a binder. The consortium's decision committee was impressed by our practical approach and our track record with similar clients. But they had concerns about our ability to manage a project of this scale and complexity. "Mr. Chen," said Robert Nash, the consortium's chairman, "your firm has an excellent reputation, but this project will require coordination across 6 different companies in multiple states. How can we be confident that you have the infrastructure and experience to manage something this complex?" I had anticipated this question and was prepared with a detailed explanation of our project management systems, our team's qualifications, and our partnerships with specialized subcontractors. But Richard asked if he could add something to my response. "Mr. Nash, I understand your concerns about scale and complexity. 5 years ago, I managed a similar consolidation project for 3 aerospace suppliers that involved $180 million in combined revenue. The challenges you're facing, integrating different accounting systems, optimizing overlapping operations, managing cultural differences between organizations, are exactly the issues we successfully addressed in that engagement." He paused and looked directly at me before continuing. "But what I learned from that experience is that technical expertise is only half the equation. The other half is having a team that's committed to seeing the project through to successful implementation. Mr. Chen and his team have demonstrated that commitment consistently, and that's why I believe Chen Financial Solutions is the right choice for this project." The room was quiet for a moment. Robert Nash looked surprised that Richard, clearly the most experienced person in the room, was advocating for a firm led by someone so much younger. "Mr. Brennan, you obviously have extensive experience in this area. Help me understand why you're recommending this approach, rather than suggesting we work with one of the larger, more established firms." Richard's response was measured and professional. "Mr. Nash, I've worked with many of the large consulting firms over the years. They're excellent at analysis and strategy development. But when it comes to implementation, actually making changes happen in real businesses with real constraints, I've learned that smaller, more agile teams often deliver better results. Chen Financial Solutions has proven they can execute complex projects successfully, and their track record speaks for itself. We won the Southwest Aerospace Consortium contract. The project kicked off in September 2022 and immediately became the centerpiece of our operations. I assembled a team of 8 consultants, including Richard, to work on various aspects of the engagement. The complexity was staggering. We were essentially creating a new company from 6 existing organizations, each with different systems, cultures, and operational approaches. Richard's contribution to the project was significant. His deep understanding of aerospace industry regulations, his relationships with key suppliers, and his experience with similar consolidations proved invaluable. But what impressed me most was his willingness to work collaboratively within our team structure. During one particularly challenging phase of the project, we discovered that two of the consortium companies were using incompatible inventory management systems that would require complete replacement to enable integration. The cost and timeline implications were substantial, and the client was pushing back on our recommendations. Richard suggested a creative workaround that would allow the companies to maintain their existing systems while creating a unified interface for consolidated reporting. The solution was elegant and cost-effective, but it required Richard to work closely with our software development partners to create custom integration tools. "I can take the lead on this if you want," he offered during our team meeting. "I have experience with these specific systems, and I think I can work with the developers to create something that meets everyone's needs." 6 months earlier, Richard would have presented this as the obvious solution and expected everyone else to support his approach. Now he was offering to take on additional responsibility to benefit the team and the client. The Southwest Aerospace project was completed successfully in February 2024, 3 weeks ahead of schedule and $150,000 under budget. The consolidated entity achieved $47 million in annual cost savings, and their operational efficiency improved by 23% within 6 months of implementation. More importantly, the success of the project established Chen Financial Solutions as a legitimate competitor for large-scale corporate engagements. Within 6 months, we were fielding inquiries from Fortune 500 companies throughout the Southwest who had heard about our track record with complex implementations. Our growth accelerated dramatically. By the end of 2023, we had expanded to 47 employees across offices in Phoenix, Tucson, and Las Vegas. Annual revenue reached $8.3 million, and we were consistently rated as one of the top consulting firms in Arizona by industry publications. The success brought new opportunities and new challenges. We were invited to bid on projects that would have been unimaginable just 5 years earlier: multi-state restructurings, international expansion strategies, and complex merger integrations for companies with billions in annual revenue. But with growth came the risk of losing the culture and approach that had made us successful. I was constantly balancing the demands of scaling operations with the need to maintain our focus on practical implementation and client results. Richard played an unexpected role in helping navigate these challenges. During a leadership team retreat in early 2024, he offered insights about the mistakes he had made while growing Brennan and Associates. "Marcus, I think you're at a critical inflection point," he said during a break in our strategic planning session. "When I was growing my firm, I made the mistake of prioritizing revenue growth over operational excellence. I took on clients that weren't a good fit, hired people who didn't share our values, and lost focus on what made us successful in the first place." He paused and looked around the room at our leadership team. "You have something special here. The culture, the focus on implementation, the commitment to client success. That's not easy to maintain as you grow. But it's also your biggest competitive advantage. Don't sacrifice it for the sake of hitting revenue targets." The advice was valuable, but what struck me most was the source. Richard Brennan, the man who had once predicted my failure, was now helping me avoid the mistakes that had led to his own downfall. As 2024 progressed, Chen Financial Solutions continued expanding into new markets and service areas. We opened an office in Denver to serve clients throughout Colorado and the Mountain West. We developed specialized expertise in renewable energy projects, technology startups, and private equity portfolio companies. But perhaps the most significant development was our growing reputation as a firm that could handle the most complex business challenges while maintaining the agility and responsiveness of a smaller organization. The validation came in August 2024, when we were selected by Meridian Capital Partners, a private equity firm with $2.8 billion in assets under management, to serve as their preferred consulting partner for portfolio company optimization projects. The Meridian relationship represented everything I had dreamed of when I first left Brennan and Associates 7 years earlier. We were working with sophisticated clients on high-impact projects that required the full range of our capabilities. More importantly, we were being recognized as equals by firms that had previously been completely out of our league. Richard's reaction to our success with Meridian was particularly meaningful. After our first quarterly review meeting with their investment team, he approached me privately. "Marcus, I owe you an apology that's long overdue," he said. "7 years ago, I told you that you'd never succeed without me. I was wrong about that, obviously, but I was wrong about something more fundamental. I thought success in this business was about experience, connections, and reputation. What you've proven is that it's really about vision, execution, and the ability to deliver value to clients." He paused and looked directly at me. "You didn't just succeed without me. You succeeded because you had a better understanding of what clients actually needed. I spent 15 years building a firm that served my ego more than it served our clients. You built something that genuinely makes other businesses better." The conversation was a moment of closure that I hadn't realized I needed. Richard's acknowledgement wasn't just about our professional relationship. It was about recognizing that success isn't determined by who has the most experience or the biggest reputation, but by who can adapt, innovate, and create real value for others. Today, Chen Financial Solutions employs 63 people across 4 offices and generates $12.7 million in annual revenue. We've worked with over 300 companies, completed projects in 17 states, and helped our clients achieve more than $400 million in cost savings and revenue improvements. Richard Brennan remains a valuable member of our team. He's been promoted twice and now serves as a senior director, earning $135,000 annually, still less than half of what he once paid me, but reflective of his contributions to our continued success. More importantly, Richard has become a mentor to our younger consultants, sharing his experience while embracing the culture and values that define Chen Financial Solutions. The arrogant executive, who once dismissed my capabilities, has been replaced by a collaborative team member who understands that sustainable success comes from empowering others rather than controlling them. The story that began with Richard's prediction that I would never succeed without him has evolved into something neither of us could have anticipated. I didn't just prove him wrong, I created an opportunity for him to be part of something better than what he had built on his own. Sometimes the greatest victory isn't defeating your former adversaries, but showing them a better way to achieve success. And sometimes the most satisfying revenge is creating something so compelling that your former critics want to be part of it. The boy who walked out of Brennan & Associates 7 years ago with a cardboard box and a head full of dreams has become the leader of one of the Southwest's most respected consulting firms. And the man who tried to destroy those dreams now works every day to help make them even bigger. Manakazaham, hacha-kama. Hacha-kamam? Manakazacha-kamam of Reims. That's not just poetic justice. That's the kind of success that changes everyone involved for the better. The invitation arrived on a Tuesday morning in March 2025, printed on expensive cardstock with elegant typography. The Arizona Business Journal was hosting their annual Entrepreneur of the Year award ceremony, and Chen Financial Solutions had been nominated in the professional services category. I stared at the invitation for a long moment, remembering the young analyst who had dreamed of attending such events as a guest, not as a nominee. The ceremony would be held at the Phoenix Convention Center, the same venue where I had attended industry conferences as Richard Brennan's subordinate, taking notes and carrying his briefcase. Sarah found me in my office that evening, still holding the invitation. "Penny for your thoughts?" she asked, settling into the chair across from my desk. "Just thinking about how different things are now," I replied. 8 years ago, I was fired from this industry. Now I'm being recognized as one of its leaders. Sarah smiled. "You know what I think the real victory is? It's not the awards or the revenue numbers. It's that you built something that actually helps people. Every client whose business you've saved, every employee whose career you've advanced, every consultant you've mentored, that's the legacy that matters." She was right, of course. The financial success was gratifying, but the real satisfaction came from knowing that Chen Financial Solutions had made a genuine difference in hundreds of businesses and thousands of lives. The awards ceremony was scheduled for a Friday evening in April. As the date approached, I found myself reflecting on the journey that had led to this moment. The desperate entrepreneur who had sat in his car in a parking garage, wondering how to pay rent, seemed like a different person entirely. But the most profound change wasn't in my circumstances. It was in my understanding of what leadership actually meant. When Richard Brennan had been my boss, leadership meant control, intimidation, and taking credit for others' work. Power was something you accumulated and wielded over people to get what you wanted. Success was measured by how much you could extract from others' efforts. Building Chen Financial Solutions had taught me that real leadership was the opposite of everything Richard had demonstrated. It meant empowering others to achieve more than they thought possible. It meant taking responsibility for failures and sharing credit for successes. It meant creating an environment where people could grow and contribute their best work. The week before the awards ceremony, I received an unexpected email from Patricia Summers, the CEO of Southwestern Manufacturing, the client whose business I had helped save during my final months at Brennan & Associates. "Marcus," she wrote, "I saw that you've been nominated for Entrepreneur of the Year. I wanted you to know that our company wouldn't exist today without the work you did 8 years ago. You didn't just solve our immediate financial crisis. You showed us how to build sustainable growth systems that have served us ever since." Southwestern Manufacturing now employs 340 people and generates $67 million in annual revenue. You should be proud of the ripple effects your work has created. Patricia's email was followed by similar messages from dozens of former clients, each sharing stories about how our work together had impacted their businesses and their lives. Reading these messages, I realized that the true measure of our success wasn't the size of our firm or the recognition we received. It was the positive impact we had created in the world. The awards ceremony arrived with typical Arizona spring weather, clear skies and perfect temperatures. I had invited my entire leadership team to attend, including Richard, who had played an increasingly important role in our strategic planning and client development. As we gathered in the hotel lobby before the event, I looked around at the team we had built. Jennifer Martinez, who had started as a junior analyst and was now our chief operating officer. Mike Thompson, whose operations expertise had been crucial to our scaling success. Lisa Park, who had developed our proprietary analysis software and was leading our technology innovation efforts. And Richard Brennan, who had transformed from an adversarial former boss into a trusted advisor and valued team member. "Whatever happens tonight," I told the group, "I want you to know that this recognition belongs to all of us. Chen Financial Solutions isn't successful because of any individual. It's successful because we've built something together that's bigger than any of us could have achieved alone." The ceremony itself was elegant and inspiring. Business leaders from across Arizona gathered to celebrate entrepreneurship, innovation, and economic growth. As I listened to the stories of other nominees, founders who had built manufacturing companies, technology startups, and social enterprises, I was struck by the common themes of persistence, adaptation, and service to others. When they announced the professional services category, my heart rate quickened. The other nominees were impressive. A law firm that specialized in intellectual property, an engineering consulting company that had designed renewable energy projects throughout the Southwest, and an executive search firm that had placed leaders at Fortune 500 companies. The winner of this year's Professional Services Entrepreneur of the Year award, the presenter announced, is Marcus Chen of Chen Financial Solutions. The applause was enthusiastic, but what moved me most was seeing my team's reaction. Jennifer was wiping away tears. Mike was pumping his fist in celebration. Lisa was recording the moment on her phone. And Richard was standing and applauding with genuine pride, his face reflecting none of the competitive resentment I might have expected from someone in his position. My acceptance speech was brief and focused on the team that had made our success possible. But as I stood at the podium, looking out at an audience that included many of the business leaders who had once dismissed me as an inexperienced upstart, I couldn't help but think about the journey that had brought me to this moment. 8 years earlier, Richard Brennan had told me that I would never succeed without him. He had predicted that I would come crawling back, begging for a job. He had been convinced that success in business required his resources, his connections, and his guidance. Standing on that stage, holding an award that recognized me as one of Arizona's top entrepreneurs, I realized that Richard had been both completely wrong and partially right. He was wrong about my need for his specific resources and guidance. I had succeeded not because of what he had taught me, but despite the limitations he had tried to impose on me. I had built something better than what he had created, using principles and approaches that were fundamentally different from his. But he was partially right about one thing. Success in business isn't a solo endeavor. It requires collaboration, mentorship, and the ability to leverage other people's strengths. The difference was in how you approached those relationships. Richard had viewed relationships as transactional, ways to extract value from others for his own benefit. I had learned to view them as partnerships, opportunities to create mutual value and shared success. The proof was sitting at our table. Every member of our leadership team had grown professionally and financially by being part of Chen Financial Solutions. Richard himself had found a more fulfilling career path as a trusted advisor rather than a controlling boss. Our clients had achieved better results by working with consultants who genuinely cared about their success. After the ceremony, we gathered at a nearby restaurant to celebrate. The conversation was lively and optimistic, filled with discussions about future opportunities and strategic goals. But as the evening wound down, Richard asked if he could speak with me privately. We stepped outside onto the restaurant's patio, where the Phoenix skyline glittered in the distance. "Marcus," he began, "I've been thinking about something you said earlier about this recognition belonging to all of us. I wanted you to know that being part of this team has been one of the most rewarding experiences of my career." He paused, looking out at the city lights. "When I built Brennan and Associates, I thought success meant being in control of everything. I thought leadership meant having all the answers and making all the decisions. What I've learned working for you is that real leadership means creating space for other people to excel." Richard turned to face me directly. "You didn't just prove me wrong about your capabilities. You showed me a better way to think about business and success. I'm a better consultant and a better person because of what I've learned here." The conversation was a moment of profound closure. The relationship that had begun with conflict and ended with Richard's employment had evolved into something approaching mutual respect and genuine partnership. "Richard," I replied, "I won't pretend that your prediction about my failure didn't motivate me, but what motivated me more was the opportunity to build something better than what either of us had experienced before. You've been an important part of that success." As we rejoined the celebration inside, I reflected on the complete transformation our relationship had undergone. The adversarial dynamic that had defined our interaction 8 years earlier had been replaced by collaborative partnership focused on serving clients and building sustainable success. Today, Chen Financial Solutions continues to grow and evolve. We've expanded into new markets, developed innovative service offerings, and attracted some of the brightest talent in the consulting industry. Our client base includes Fortune 500 companies, private equity firms, and emerging businesses throughout the American Southwest. Richard Brennan remains a valued member of our team, now serving as Senior Strategic Advisor and earning $145,000 annually, a salary that reflects his contributions while still serving as a reminder of how dramatically our positions have reversed. But the most important lesson from this entire experience isn't about revenge or vindication. It's about the difference between success that's built on controlling others and success that's built on empowering others. When Richard fired me 8 years ago, he thought he was protecting his business from competition. What he actually did was create the conditions for me to build something better than what he had ever imagined. His attempt to limit my potential became the catalyst for me to exceed his expectations and my own. The young man who walked out of Brennan and Associates with a cardboard box and uncertain future has become the leader of a firm that employs over 60 people and generates millions in annual revenue. More importantly, he's learned that the greatest success comes not from defeating your adversaries, but from creating opportunities for everyone to win. Richard was right about one thing. I never would have succeeded without him, but not in the way he intended. I succeeded because his treatment of me taught me exactly the kind of leader I didn't want to become. I succeeded because his predictions of my failure motivated me to prove him wrong. And I succeeded because his eventual willingness to work for me proved that transformation and redemption are always possible. Sometimes the best revenge really is massive success. But even better than revenge is building something so compelling that your former critics want to be part of it. That's not just poetic justice. That's the kind of success that changes everyone involved for the better. Yes. Looking for more? We've got 2 amazing stories ready for you right on screen. If this one touched you, these are absolutely worth your time. Click to watch them now. And hey, subscribe and hit that bell to never miss our latest uploads.